I was in my Harvard dorm room, highlighting a passage about constitutional law, when my phone rang. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. My mom's name lit up the screen. I almost didn't answer because I had a paper due at midnight, but something made me pick up. Her voice was shaking but controlled. The kind of controlled that meant she'd practiced what she was going to say. "Wendy, you need to come home this weekend. Pack what you need for a few days." I put down my highlighter. "Mom, I have midterms next week. Can this wait until Thanksgiving?" "No," she said. Her tone shifted, harder now. "This isn't a discussion. I'll send you money for the train ticket. Be home Friday evening." Then she hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, trying to figure out what emergency could possibly require me to leave campus during midterms. My grandmother was fine. I'd just talked to her last week. My sister Lily was safe at Boston University, only 20 minutes away from me, but living in a completely different world. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it away and went back to my paper. Friday evening, I walked into our kitchen and found my mom sitting at the table with a stack of printed papers in front of her. The overhead light was too bright. Everything felt staged, like she'd been waiting in that exact position for me to arrive. "Sit down," she said. I sat. She slid the papers toward me. The top page had Harvard's logo on it. It was a withdrawal form. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud because the idea was so absurd. "What is this?" I asked, still smiling because I thought maybe this was some kind of joke I wasn't getting. "You're withdrawing from Harvard at the end of this semester," she said. Her voice was calm, like she was telling me we were having chicken for dinner. My smile disappeared. "What are you talking about?" She tapped the paper. "It's already filled out, you just need to sign it." I looked down. Every line was completed in her handwriting. My name, my student ID number, the withdrawal date. At the bottom in the parent-guardian signature line, she'd already signed her name. "You can't do this," I said. "I'm your mother," she replied. "Yes, I can." I pushed the papers away. "I'm not signing anything. This is insane. I'm doing well, my grades are fine, I don't understand what's happening right now." My mom folded her hands on the table. "Your sister is struggling." I waited for more, but she just stared at me like that explained everything. "Lily's struggling?" I repeated. "So I have to drop out of Harvard? How does that make sense?" "She's depressed, Wendy. She can't focus. Her grades are slipping, and she's talking about transferring to a community college because she feels like she can't compete." "Compete with what?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "With you." My mom's eyes were hard now. "She can't shine while you're at Harvard. The family can only support one success story, and she needs it more than you do." The words hit me like cold water. I sat back in my chair trying to process what she'd just said. "You don't need Harvard like she does," my mom continued. "You're smart, you'll be fine anywhere, but Lily needs the boost, the confidence, the attention. She needs to feel special." "And I don't?" The question came out smaller than I intended. My mom didn't answer. I tried a different approach. "Mom, my financial aid covers almost everything. You're barely paying anything for me to be there. This doesn't make financial sense." Something flickered across her face. "The aid is still family money, Wendy. Don't act like you're completely independent." I frowned. "What do you mean? The aid goes directly to my account. It's mine." "And where do you think the refund checks go?" she snapped. "After tuition and housing are paid, there's money left over. That money helps this family." My stomach dropped. I'd noticed the refund amounts on my student portal were always lower than I expected, but I'd assumed it was fees or books or something. I never checked closely because I trusted my mom to handle the financial aid paperwork. "You've been taking my aid refunds?" I asked slowly. "It's family money," she repeated, like that justified everything. "Lily needs tutoring, better housing, connection opportunities. That money doesn't just disappear, Wendy. It goes toward building her future." I realized then that I'd been funding my own replacement. That night, I went upstairs and found Lily in her room. She was lying on her bed scrolling through her phone, completely relaxed. When I walked in, she barely looked up. "Did you know about this?" I asked. She kept scrolling. "Know about what?" "Mom wants me to withdraw from Harvard so you can what? Feel better about yourself?" Lily finally looked at me. She didn't seem surprised or upset. She just shrugged. "Yeah, she mentioned it," she said casually. She said once you step aside, I'll get better housing, more tutoring, and access to her connections for internships. It makes sense, honestly. I stared at her. It makes sense? You'll be fine, Wendy. You always land on your feet. She went back to her phone like the conversation was over. I stood there trying to find words. My little sister, who I'd helped with homework for years, who I'd driven to campus tours, who I'd celebrated with when she got into Boston University, had just dismissed my entire future like it was nothing. You expected this, I said quietly. Lily didn't deny it. Sunday morning, I told my mom I wasn't signing the withdrawal form. I said it calmly, clearly, thinking that if I was reasonable, she'd back down. Instead, she sat me down again at that same kitchen table and explained what would happen if I refused. You're still on our phone plan, so that goes. You're on our car insurance, that goes too. Your health insurance is through me, so you'll lose that. And obviously, you can't live here during breaks anymore. I felt my throat tighten. You're threatening me. I'm explaining reality, she said. You think you're independent, but you're not. You're 19 years old, with no credit history, no apartment, no job that can support you. You're at Harvard because this family made sacrifices for you. Now it's time for you to make a sacrifice for your sister. This isn't a sacrifice, I said. This is you throwing me away. My mom's face didn't change. Sign the paper, Wendy. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. And if I don't, then you figure out how to survive on your own, she said simply. You're not independent. Don't forget that. I signed the withdrawal form on Monday morning. My hand shook so badly I could barely hold the pen. My mom stood over me the entire time, watching. When I finished, she immediately took the papers, walked to her office, and scanned them. I heard the printer whirring. She was making copies, protecting herself, making sure I couldn't take it back. This is for the best, she said when she came back into the kitchen. You'll see that eventually. I didn't respond. I just sat there staring at the table, trying to figure out how my life had collapsed in 3 days. My mom made me a cup of tea I didn't drink. She talked about how I could take classes at the community college, how I could get a job and save money, how this was just a temporary setback. She sounded so reasonable, so calm, like she genuinely believed she was helping me. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded and went back upstairs to pack my things from Harvard. When I returned to campus to move out, I had to go to the administrative office to submit the withdrawal form. The woman behind the desk, Mrs. Patterson, looked at the paperwork and then looked at me. Your mother handled everything? She asked carefully. I nodded. And you're certain this is what you want? I couldn't say yes, so I just nodded again. Mrs. Patterson was quiet for a moment. Then she said, That's unusual. Most students handle their own withdrawal paperwork, especially at your age. Something in her tone made me look up. She was watching me with concern, like she could see through the carefully rehearsed story I'd prepared about needing time off for family reasons. Are you all right, Wendy? She asked softly. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to break down and explain that I didn't want to leave, that I was being forced out, that my own mother had chosen my sister over me. But what could she do? The paperwork was signed. The decision was made. I'm fine, I lied. Thank you for everything. Mrs. Patterson handed me a folder with exit information. As I left, I felt her eyes following me out the door. Back home, I spent my days in my room, avoiding everyone. My mom acted like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just destroyed my future. She hummed while making dinner, chatted on the phone with friends, planned Lily's spring semester schedule. One afternoon, I overheard her talking to my aunt. Wendy just couldn't handle the pressure, she was saying. Harvard was too much for her. She's taking some time off to figure out what she really wants. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to her rewrite history in real time. No, she's fine, my mom continued. A little embarrassed, but fine. You know how these prestigious schools are? They're not for everyone. Lily's doing wonderfully at BU though, really thriving. Not a single person called to check on me. Not my aunt, not my grandmother. Not family friends who'd celebrated when I got into Harvard. They all just accepted my mom's version of events without question. I realized then that silence protects lies. As long as I stayed quiet, her story would become the truth. 3 weeks after I withdrew, Lily came home for winter break. She was excited about her spring schedule. about the new apartment my mom had secured for her, about the paid internship she'd landed through one of Mom's connections. Everything I'd lost was being redistributed to her like I'd never existed. One night, we got into an argument about something stupid, about her leaving dishes in the sink. But really, it wasn't about dishes. It was about everything. Why is it always her? I screamed. Why does she get everything while I get nothing? My mom turned from the stove. Her face was cold. Because she's mine. The words hung in the air. Lily went pale. My mom's eyes widened slightly like she hadn't meant to say it out loud. What did you just say? I whispered. My mom recovered quickly. I meant because she needs me. You've always been so independent, Wendy. Lily needs more support. But I'd heard what she really said. Because she's mine. Not because she needs it more, because she's hers in a way I wasn't. The room stayed silent. Nobody tried to explain it away. We all knew what had slipped out. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing those words over and over. Because she's mine. At 2 a.m., I went downstairs to my mom's office. I told myself I was just looking for old school records, maybe transcripts I'd need for community college applications. But really, I was looking for answers. In the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, under folders labeled taxes and insurance, I found a manila envelope marked legal documents important. Inside were papers I'd never seen before. Birth certificates, social security cards, medical records. And then at the bottom, adoption paperwork. Adoption finalized when I was 6 months old. The biological child listed separately, Lily, born 3 years later. I sat on the floor of my mom's office holding these papers, and suddenly, everything made sense. The way she'd always been warmer with Lily, quicker to forgive her mistakes. The way she'd introduced us to people, this is Lily, and this is Wendy. Never, my daughters, always that subtle separation. The way she could demand I sacrifice my future for Lily's comfort without hesitation, because to her, I wasn't hers. Not really. I was the child she'd adopted to complete the family picture, and when that picture needed adjusting, I was the obvious choice to erase. The next morning, I confronted her. I walked into the kitchen and dropped the adoption papers on the counter. You never told me, I said. My mom looked at the papers, then at me. She didn't seem surprised or panicked. She just sighed like I'd found her hidden birthday present too early. We were going to tell you when you were older, she said. I'm 19. How much older? When it felt right. She started making coffee like this was a normal conversation. We never thought it mattered, Wendy. You were ours from the moment we brought you home. But I'm not, I said. That's what you meant, because she's mine. Lily is yours. I'm just the one you took in. My mom turned to face me. That's not fair. You pulled me out of Harvard for her, I said. My voice was shaking now. You took my financial aid money and gave it to her. You erased my future so hers could be better, and you did it all without hesitation because I was never really yours to protect. She didn't deny it. Instead, she said something worse. You were meant to help the family, Wendy. That's what all of this has been about. I spent the next week researching financial aid regulations and dependency status. I made copies of everything I could find in my mom's office. Tax returns, FAFSA forms, bank statements showing the refund deposits that should have gone to me. What I discovered made me sick. My mom had been listing herself as providing over 50% of my support, which technically made me a dependent student, but the support she claimed to provide was actually my own financial aid money that she'd been redirecting. She'd report my aid as family contribution on tax forms, essentially recycling my grants and loans as if she'd earned them herself. The money that was supposed to help me afford Harvard was being funneled to pay for Lily's upgraded apartment, her private tutoring, her unpaid internship expenses. I'd been funding my sister's college experience while being told I was a burden on the family finances. It wasn't just emotional abuse, it was financial fraud. I found a free legal clinic near campus that specialized in student advocacy. The lawyer I spoke with, Mr. Howard, listened to everything without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You need to correct your dependency status, he finally said. Not to punish anyone, but to protect yourself going forward. Will there be consequences? I asked. He met my eyes. Truth always has consequences, but lies have worse ones. In January, I filed corrected FAFSA forms. I documented that I'd been living independently since my forced withdrawal, that I was paying my own rent with money from a part-time job, that I received no financial support from my family. I included statements showing the misreported aid refunds. I didn't file to hurt anyone. I filed because it was the truth. The forms asked if I was in contact with my parents. I checked no. They asked if I'd been threatened or forced to leave home. I checked yes. They asked for documentation. I provided the withdrawal form my mother had filled out and signed on my behalf. Every answer was accurate. Every box I checked was honest. I wasn't lying anymore, and I wasn't protecting the lies I'd been forced to live with. I submitted everything electronically on a Tuesday afternoon. Then I sent copies to Harvard's financial aid office with a letter explaining that my withdrawal had been coerced and that my previous aid information had been inaccurate due to parental control of my finances. I didn't know what would happen next. I just knew I was done carrying the weight of other people's deceptions. The response came faster than I expected. First, Harvard's financial aid office contacted me to verify my new information and discuss reinstatement possibilities. They'd flagged the unusual circumstances of my withdrawal and wanted to investigate further. Then, the Department of Education sent notification that they were reviewing my file for the previous 2 years due to discrepancies in reported income and support claims. Then Boston University's financial aid office froze Lily's account pending verification of family finances. It all happened within 3 weeks. The truth I'd been sitting on for months started creating ripples I couldn't control. Not because I'd lied or exaggerated, but because I'd simply stopped participating in the fraud. Every office that reviewed my corrected forms had the same question. Where had the refund money actually gone? When they traced the deposits, they didn't find rent payments or my living expenses. They found transfers to accounts in my mother's name, then purchases that matched Lily's upgraded lifestyle. The financial aid offices didn't need me to accuse anyone. The paper trail spoke for itself. My mom called me at 6 a.m. on a Thursday, screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "What did you do?" she yelled. "Lily's entire aid package is frozen. They're saying we committed fraud. They want to see 3 years of bank statements." I was silent. "They're demanding we pay back the refunds. That's over $15,000, Wendy. How are we supposed to come up with that?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "You did this," she screamed. "You ruined everything. The tuition payment for next semester is due and Lily can't register for classes. They're threatening to expel her." "I didn't lie, Mom," I said. "I just stopped lying for you." She made a sound like she'd been punched. "You selfish, ungrateful." I hung up. She called back 14 times. I didn't answer. Then Lily started texting. "Please fix this. Mom is having a breakdown. I might lose my scholarship. Why are you doing this to us?" I turned off my phone and went to work. Over the next month, everything my mom had built for Lily started crumbling. The fancy apartment near campus? Too expensive without my redirected aid money. The private tutoring? Canceled. The paid internship that wasn't really paid but had been subsidized with family support? She couldn't afford the transportation and professional wardrobe costs. My mom had to take out personal loans to cover Lily's spring tuition. She maxed out credit cards, paying back the refund money the university demanded. The lifestyle she'd constructed for her biological daughter was collapsing because it had been built on stolen ground. And Lily, who'd been so confident that she'd always land on her feet, was discovering what it felt like when the safety net disappeared. I heard all of this through my grandmother, who called me weekly to check in. She'd always been kind to me, even when others weren't, and she was the only one who seemed to understand why I'd done what I did. "Your mother is very angry," Grandma told me. "But Lily is angrier. She's blaming your mom for getting caught." "Not for doing it?" I asked. "No," Grandma said sadly. "Not for doing it, just for getting caught." By March, Lily was failing 2 classes, without the tutoring and without me to help her. She couldn't keep up with the coursework. She'd never actually learned how to study on her own, because someone had always been there to carry her. She was put on academic probation. If she didn't raise her grades by the end of the semester, she'd lose her merit scholarship entirely. My mom hired a cheaper tutor. But it didn't help. Lily had been coasted through high school and her first year of college on support systems that were now gone. She didn't know how to take notes effectively, how to manage her time, how to ask professors for help. She'd never needed to develop those skills. I'd spent years helping her with homework, explaining concepts she didn't understand, proofreading her papers. She'd always assumed that was just what sisters did, not realizing she was depending on someone she'd later help discard. By April, she was talking about transferring to a state school or taking time off completely. The prestigious BU degree she'd been promised as her consolation prize for my sacrifice was slipping away. My mom blamed me for that too. The social fallout was quieter, but just as devastating. My mom had built her identity around being a successful parent, the kind of mother other people admired. She'd served on school committees, volunteered for college prep programs, bragged about her daughter's achievements. But now, quietly, professionally, people were stepping back. She was removed from the financial aid advisory committee at her church after the fraud investigation became known. She was passed over for a leadership position in her professional organization. Colleagues who'd once invited her to lunch stopped calling. Nobody confronted her directly. Nobody made dramatic accusations. They just quietly distanced themselves from someone whose integrity had been publicly questioned. She'd always had so much control over how people saw her, over the narrative of her family. But she couldn't control an official investigation or the paper trail that proved she'd stolen from her adopted daughter to benefit her biological one. The reputation she'd carefully built for decades was eroding, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. She'd lost control, and for someone like my mom, that was worse than any financial penalty. Meanwhile, I was building a life that didn't include them. I worked full-time at a coffee shop and took 2 classes at night at the community college. It wasn't Harvard, but it was mine. I rented a tiny room in a shared apartment with 3 other students. I bought my own phone plan, got my own car insurance, opened a bank account my mother couldn't access. Every bill I paid, every decision I made without asking permission, felt like a small victory. I wasn't thriving, I was surviving. But there was a freedom in that survival that I'd never experienced before. Nobody was taking my money. Nobody was forcing me to sacrifice my future for someone else's comfort. Nobody was telling me I was selfish for wanting to exist on my own terms. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Not happy, not secure, not successful, just safe. Peace felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable. I kept waiting for someone to take it away, but as weeks turned into months, I started to believe it might actually last. In May, my mom called, not screaming this time, crying. "Wendy, please," she said. "I'm begging you, fix this. Talk to the financial aid office, tell them it was a misunderstanding, tell them you made a mistake on the forms." "I didn't make a mistake," I said. "Lily might have to drop out," she sobbed. "She's going to lose everything because of you. Is that what you want, to destroy your sister's future?" I thought about that question for a long moment. Then I said, "You destroyed my future and called it a sacrifice. Why is it different when it happens to her?" Silence. "Please," she whispered. "I'll do anything." "There's nothing to fix, Mom. I just told the truth." I hung up. Then Lily texted. Not angry this time, but desperate. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Please help me. I didn't understand what this would do." I read the message 3 times, trying to find genuine remorse in it. But all I could see was, "I'm sorry for the consequences," not "I'm sorry for what I did to you." I didn't respond. By summer, the truth had fully settled. My mom had to refinance the house to cover the money she owed. Lily transferred to a cheaper state school where she could commute from home. The upgraded life, the prestige, the careful construction of success, it had all collapsed. Grandma told me my mom was seeing a therapist, though I don't know if that was her choice or a requirement from the fraud settlement. During one session, apparently, she'd admitted she was afraid I would leave the family if I became too successful, too independent. So she'd kept me close by keeping me dependent, and when that wasn't enough, she'd cut me down entirely. "She panicked," Grandma explained gently. "She was so afraid of losing you that she destroyed you instead." Lily admitted to our grandmother that she'd never wanted the pressure of being the successful one. She'd liked the perks, the money, the attention, but she hated the expectations that came with it. She was failing at a cheaper school, not because she couldn't afford tutoring, but because she'd never actually wanted what my mom wanted for her. They were both living with regret now, but it was this self-centered kind of regret. Not I hurt someone, but I hurt myself by hurting someone. I didn't feel sorry for them. In August, my mom asked to meet me for coffee. I almost said no, but something made me agree. Maybe I needed to see her face one last time to know I was really done. We met at a neutral place, a cafe neither of us had been to before. She looked older, tired, she'd lost weight, and her hair had more gray in it than I remembered. "I'm sorry," she said as soon as we sat down. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I'm sorry." I waited. "I was wrong," she continued. "I was so focused on Lily, on making sure she had every advantage, that I didn't see what I was doing to you. I convinced myself you were stronger, that you didn't need me the way she did. But that wasn't fair." "No," I said, "it wasn't." "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked. I looked at this woman who'd raised me, who'd signed permission slips and attended school plays, and taught me to ride a bike. And I thought about the woman who'd filled out withdrawal papers in my name, who'd stolen my financial aid money, who'd told me I was meant to help the family, as if I wasn't really part of it. "You didn't lose me because I told the truth," I said quietly. "You lost me because you made me disposable. The moment Lily needed something I had, you threw me away without hesitation. That's not something I can forgive." My mom started crying. "Please, Wendy, you're my daughter." "Am I?" I asked. "Because when it mattered, you chose, and you didn't choose me." I stood up and left money for my coffee on the table. As I walked out, I heard her crying behind me, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing more to say. A year later, their lives had settled into a smaller, harder reality. My mom was still paying off loans. Lily was still at the state school, working part-time to help with expenses, finally learning what it meant to carry her own weight. They'd downsized to a smaller house. My mom had taken a second job. They'd lost the facade of effortless success and were living in the truth of what they'd built on lies. Grandma said Lily was actually doing better academically now that the pressure was off. She'd switched her major to something she actually cared about instead of what looked impressive. She was making real friends instead of network contacts. "She's growing up," Grandma told me. Finally. My mom had stopped calling. The apologies had ended when she realized I wasn't coming back. I think she'd finally accepted that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. They were living with their choices daily, and that was justice enough for me. I didn't need them to suffer. I just needed them to understand that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're entitled to make others sacrifice. I'm back at Harvard now. It took a year of paperwork, appeals, and financial restructuring, but the university investigated my withdrawal and determined it had been made under coercion. They reinstated me with a full financial aid package, this one protected and sent directly to me. I'm a year behind where I would have been, but I'm here. On my own terms. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what happened, if I wish I'd handled it differently. The truth is, I didn't do anything except stop lying. I didn't sabotage anyone. I didn't plot revenge. I just corrected false information and let the truth create its own consequences. I didn't ruin their lives. I stopped carrying them. And for the first time I can remember, I feel light. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not sad. I'm just free. Free from the weight of being disposable. From the burden of making myself smaller so someone else could feel bigger. From the lie that love means sacrifice without reciprocity. My mom made me drop out of Harvard because my sister needed it more. But what she didn't understand was that need and deserve aren't the same thing. And that truth, once spoken, can't be taken back. I didn't fight back with anger or revenge, I just stopped participating in the lie. And that was enough.